Buy-to-let, thatched, commercial. We're your high street insurance brokers for all types of insurance. Avoid faceless internet firms.
High House Insurance, do it face to face.
See Neil and the friendly team at High Street Selsey.
High House Insurance, do it face to face.
Or call Selsey 606 552.
Hello, this is Maureen Sullivan from Selsey Internet Radio to tell you what's happening in our town. If you've got something interesting to share, please email us through our website, and there's a good chance your news will be included in one of our next transmissions. Selsey has always honoured its dead, and so we're now going to hear from Mike Nicholls about how Selsey proposes to commemorate the start of the First World War.
This is Hugh Graham for Selsey Internet Radio, and I'm talking with Mike Nicholls about a community project set up by Mike Beale, Chair of the Town Council. Mike, I understand the project commemorates the Selsey men who died during the First World War. Can you tell me how they're being commemorated?
Yes, Hugh. The plan is that in August next year, on the first weekend of the month, which will be the 100th anniversary of the outbreak of the First World War, there'll be an appropriate commemorative event, probably at the Selsey Centre and probably over 3 nights, the centrepiece of which will be a parade of children carrying white crosses, each representing the 57 men whose names are on the War Memorial from the First World War. And the aim of our research project is that we are collecting information and hopefully a photograph of each of those men in order to make it more personal.
How are you getting the photographs?
Through a variety of means. We've had a number of local events to which people have come with photographs that they've got in their own records and family archives. We've got.
Was this one of the occasions when I came up with my grandfather?
Yes, we've had sort of coffee mornings, and next month we're doing an exhibition and those sort of things to publicise the need and to invite people to come forward. So we've had some local people who've offered us photographic material. We've also got some from various websites, and they're increasing now as the proximity to the 100th anniversary comes round. So a mixture really of local people and web activity.
Have you contacted the local regiment?
Yes, we've contacted all sorts of people, including sort of local newspapers, the Record Office, and regimental headquarters. Yeah.
So, which regimental headquarters now covers that regiment? Because it's presumably changed its name.
Yes, I mean, most of the evidence about the Sussex Regiment you can still find online, so you haven't necessarily physically got to go anywhere, though you can do so if you wish.
And does the or has the historian helped you?
Yes, I mean we've had a lot of help, and there is now a project being developed county-wide by the Library Service, which is to create a digital record of Sussex and its contribution to the First World War. And so that will provide us with more access and more opportunity to gain what we want.
Okay. How many people are actually on the Selsey Memorial?
57.
All men?
Yes.
No ladies in that at that time?
Not in that number. We are discovering, of course, that there were some people who came back alive, and we're now adding them to our list and doing a little bit of research where we can. And of course women played a significant part, but there are no names of women on the War Memorial.
Okay, so of the names that were on the Selsey Memorial, what proportion of them were soldiers, sailors, or perhaps even members of the Royal Flying Corps?
So far as we've been able to discover, 98% were soldiers, and there were possibly one, maybe 2 people who were involved in the Navy, but no airmen.
Do you not find that strange? Because Selsey at that time was a fishing village.
Yep.
So were the fishermen excused from war service? Do you think, or what?
Well, I'm sure that some were, but I think it was more a question that as a community the young men went, and the most natural thing was to join up with the Sussex Regiment.
Okay.
Because that had a local connection.
So this is one of the PALS regiments, wasn't it?
Yes.
And you said, I think somebody said, that on several occasions more than one Selsey man died in the same battle.
Yeah, we've got evidence, I think, that on 2 occasions as many as 3 young men died on the same day in the same battle. There is one family who during the war lost 3 sons. So
3 sons?
Yeah, these things have a very sort of poignant aspect to them, both in terms of specific days when tragedies occurred and also families to whom real adversity came during that 4 or 5 year period.
My grandfather had 3 sisters, Florence, Daisy and Sally. Florence married a chap called Frank Truman, but she was the only one of the 3 that was able to find a husband. Sally and Daisy were both engaged 3 times during that war to other young men, each time the young men were killed. And when I asked them, perhaps unwisely, why they hadn't married, they said, it's quite simple, Hugh. There were no young men left to marry.
Sure.
So it must have been awful, wasn't it?
Absolutely, and I mean, if you think in a community like Selsey, where the population was probably no more than 700 in 1914, and you take out 57 young men, that's possibly 20-25% of the male population. That would have been devastating for families and for, you know, marriage prospects of young women. And I think that in the years that followed, the community only recovered because of income as the population grew.
Okay. When this archive is finished, what will you do with it?
Well, I think there are 2 aims. One is to link up with ArtStream Selsey to produce a digital archive that will be made accessible particularly to children and young people, and we're trying to partner with the schools in the development of that. And the other is to help Marilyn Smith, who in 1985 produced a book through the Selsey Society on the Second World War.
Okay.
And we're hoping to have a similar book that commemorates each of these men on the First World War, and to have that ready in 2018, which will be the 100th anniversary of the finish.
That's really exciting, isn't it?
Yes.
So, how, of the 57 that you got on the memorial, how many photographs of those people have you now got?
We've probably got about 20% so far, and gaining little insights, all the time. But I think we are hopeful that as more and more records are put online, then we shall be able to gain quite a lot of photographs through regimental records and other things of that kind that are being made available online.
When you talk about local families, of the 57 names on the memorial, they were all obviously local people.
Yes.
When you've been doing research onto those names, how many families are still local?
About 25%. The rest have either died out here or moved away, and so we've had to cast our net pretty wide to get out the information of what we want. And we're beginning to get people coming to us from further afield, with the offer of information and records. And we're also getting local people who've moved to Selsey, who are telling us about loved ones they lost, not necessarily from Selsey, but they're here now. And I think it indicates that this whole remembrance is quite an emotional journey, and people want to share in it in some way, whether they were originally from Selsey or whether they've moved here, and so want to be part of something that is an appropriate commemoration for those who gave their lives and those who were engaged in the conflict but remained alive.
Okay, so when people have given you the information, have you been getting that information from grandchildren, from brothers and sisters, or from a whole range of family?
Yeah, from a range of family. We have talked to 1 or 2 very elderly brothers or sisters who've shared very poignant information, from personal memory with quite a few tears, and that has to be handled very sensitively. And of course people treasure their materials. So we've often photographed material and taken that away rather than the originals, because we obviously don't want to.
I can remember you took my
anything.
photographs away, and I had them back within 48 hours.
Yeah. Well, we're trying to be respectful and courteous and careful.
What are you doing with the pictures? Why are they so important?
Well, because as I say, I think for the commemorative event itself next year, we want to have a photograph of each individual. But also, for instance, in August, we're doing a 3-day exhibition as part of the festival.
Yep.
That will be of First World War memorabilia, and obviously, photographs, are really helpful in that way. And we hope that this will become a digital archive. So, as a beginning of that, next week, I think it is, the local Observer newspaper are doing an article about the exhibition, and we've sent them 5 photographs just to enhance the quality of the words that we sent in.
Okay. Will you turn it into a website so that anybody can access it?
Yeah, the hope is after August next year, we can secure some funding that will enable a couple of digital artists from Chichester to help us to turn that material into an appropriate website that's easily accessible and can be used by all ages.
So, will that take the form of some sort of narrative?
It could well do. I think the answer is at the moment it's still an embryonic project, and there aren't a lot of details. There's a lot of hope and aspiration, but not a lot of detail.
So, when the children are planting the crosses, you said when we were originally talking about it that they would probably do that in the grass verge outside the Selsey Centre.
That's one of the ideas. Mike has worked on the script of the commemorative event, and he has a colleague who's going to sort of direct it. So there are a lot of details that are being worked out, as we speak. But I think the idea will be that there will be something outside that the public who are passing can see.
Okay. Will the relatives of those people who died play a prominent part in this?
I think that, as I say, that there are a lot of details to be worked out. And I think it's also true to say that some relatives may wish to, but as you know, a lot of people who've been associated with both the World Wars, they don't want to talk about it because the horrors were too great.
I understand that.
And so I think there will be people who will shy away from this, and that's why I think the whole thing's got to be handled very sensitively and respectfully.
My father's brother was a chap called Desmond, and he went into Dachau just after the end of the war. And he would never talk about it, and he never talked about it right up until the point he died. And I can understand that.
Yeah, I think we're dealing with pretty unspeakable horrors in some ways, and certainly devastating consequences for families and for communities, and it's a serious business.
Do you think that the children who take part in that service will have an indelible memory of their participation later?
I would have thought it's a poignant event that you would never forget. How much these things have an impression that lasts on the character of the children is difficult to say, and I guess that, like all of us, when we kind of remember things that we've been involved in, one of the difficulties is that if you haven't been through it yourself, you can't quite grasp how difficult it was, can you?
No, you can't. But it's part of our history, isn't it?
Yep.
And if you believe the media says that we have forgotten part of our history. Yep. And there now seems to be a resurgence of taking notice of what sacrifices were made in the First and the Second World Wars. Do you think this will be used by the school in their history lesson?
Yes, I think it will. We've already had an invitation from the Academy School to link with a group of students in sharing the research together. Right. We're hoping to start that in September, and I'm sure it will play a part. But I also think that it will have an effect generally. I think you can't look at things like this without it reminding you of how futile a lot of conflict is. And even at a personal level in our own lives, if it just reminds us again to try and avoid conflict and look for reconciliation and peace, It seems to me a useful lesson in a way.
My grandfather told my grandmother about the time at the beginning of the First World War, when the Germans and the British soldiers were playing football at Christmas.
Yep.
And it took the high command on both sides a long time to get them started again.
Yep.
Because they discovered there was no difference between the German men and the British men, and they quite liked each other.
Yep.
And so afterwards, after the Christmas holiday was over, it was very difficult for them to shoot their friends.
Absolutely, and I think it's also a reminder in those circumstances that when people in high authority, whether in the services or in politics, take decisions about conflict, it's ordinary people that they're sending to pursue the conflict, and so it's a very great responsibility.
And those ordinary people often don't understand why.
Absolutely.
When you have completed this project, are you going to turn it into a book?
The hope is...
You mentioned Marilyn's...
Yes, the hope is that it will contribute to both a book and, as I say, a website archive, so that what's been gained is made available for posterity.
So we could probably buy that book?
Oh, absolutely.
Michael, thank you very much indeed.
My pleasure, Hugh.
Thanks for that, Mike. It was really interesting. And now Bob Arnold.
Hello, this is Bob Arnold, and today I'm in Selsey Town Hall, and in particular I'm in the office of Sam Tate, who's the town coordinator. Hi, Sam.
Hello there, Bob.
Job of coordinator, it sounds quite mystical to me. You've been in the job now since April. You must now understand what it's about. Tell me a little bit about it.
I wish I did understand, Bob. I would say I have the broadest remit possible in the job, which is basically to go away and do whatever the town council think looks like it's a good idea. At the moment, that's looking at what we can do to support the economy, to support growth and jobs. We suffer, as do many seaside towns, with the fact that our economy is very seasonal, so work tends to dry up in the winter. Our work tends to be focused around service industries, accommodation providers, care providers, and so it's not the best paid, even if it does require skills. They're not skills that are recognised necessarily and rewarded financially as well as they should be. So there's a challenge in what we can do to get better paid work here, to get more opportunities in, to create the right environment to attract those kind of businesses to Selsey. So at the moment, that's really what I'm trying to focus on, is what we can do to improve the economy for all of us. If the economy's better, we all benefit, then more money gets spent on the high street, so the shops benefit, we retain our young people, we keep the talent in the town, everyone's a winner. So that's the challenge.
So why aren't we in that situation already? What's actually gone wrong in Selsey?
I think it's the same thing that's gone wrong for many seaside towns. We had a reliance on a tourism industry that was based on UK visitors. As people moved abroad and went for cheap holidays, people stopped coming, and we perhaps didn't respond as well to that as we should. We haven't necessarily reshaped what Selsey is to attract new visitors, which makes it very hard. Which is not to say that we're actually not in a better position than many places. We still have a very, very busy and popular holiday park here, which actually does keep our town a lot busier in the summer than, say, some seaside towns, like, along the coast. You think places like Littlehampton or Bognor have perhaps suffered more in some ways than Selsey, because they don't have still as many regular visitors as we do. But there is still, I think, an element that the town hasn't necessarily kept up to date with the changes in what people are looking for, with what we're actually offering. So I think perhaps there's work that we need to do on that to make sure that we're actually selling the products, delivering the services that people are looking for when they're here on holiday. What we don't want, which I think happens a lot, is that people come here to stay and they base themselves in Selsey, and then they go up the road and spend money in Chichester. We want to keep them spending it here.
But the other towns you mentioned, for example, Bognor, you can see when you go there that there's quite a large infrastructure. There's a lot of big hotels, some dilapidated. There's a fairly large town centre now. What's evident to me as a fairly new immigrant to Selsey is that it's always had that small town look and feel about it.
Absolutely. We've always managed to retain that about our character, and it's really important that we keep that, because actually that's a really valuable asset for us. So one of the great challenges in Selsey is how do you develop us and how do you develop the economy without actually losing the essence of what is special about Selsey. People do love the fact that it is a very tight-knit community. The road, I know everyone moans about the road, and it is something to moan about if you're trying to leave Selsey, but actually if you're here as a visitor on holiday, it's a benefit is that we're at the end of a road and that we are quiet. And so again, you have to look at how you can turn what can be disadvantages into benefits as well, because we do have a captive audience here in the summer. A lot of people don't like to leave, especially on a weekend when you know that the traffic on the A27 is going to be horrendous and you won't get past it after 10 o'clock in the morning. So it's really about keeping those people in Selsey, giving them opportunities to spend money here. People that are here on holiday, they're here to spend money. They've got money burning a hole in their pocket and they want to have a good time, so we need to give them the right range of shops, restaurants, pubs, places where they can spend that money with us.
I think sometimes there's a fear with local residents about too much development, too much change, the old disappears, the new, which is unfamiliar, arrives, the road won't cope with traffic. There's a lot of concerns, and yet by the same token people recognise that things aren't right in Selsey and there is so much more to do. So, bit of a dilemma there in a way.
It is, and I think it comes back again to you look at the type of development and you look at the scale of the development. We're never going to be the location where Amazon choose to base their latest distribution hub. Clearly, we would fall down on many criteria, and we probably wouldn't want something like that here anyway. That's fine. But equally, we do need to look at what industries do we actually want to attract here, to give young people opportunities to stay here so that they can actually have careers here, they can live in their communities with their families. So we need to be looking at creating the right conditions to maybe attract some of the creative industries, media-based industries, things like that, which are fairly low density, which can be small scale, but which actually provide a lot of high value to the area. There's a very good creative scene along the whole of the south coast. I think Selsey is missing out on a huge opportunity there at the moment, because we have cheaper rental prices for commercial property than, say, places like Chichester, and actually we also have a lot of lifestyle attractions to those kind of businesses. We are by the beach, we're by the sea and stuff, so I think there's a lot there we can do to plug in and actually try and promote Selsey as a place to incubate and encourage creativity and innovation, start to kind of like get more jobs here, more quality jobs, more opportunities.
So the change won't come about without some sort of catalyst to do that. Perhaps you're the catalyst in this, in that that's the role that's been created to bring you in that will start the whole thing off. But there must be some money to have to be spent to get to where we want to be.
There is always a need for money, and there's never enough of it, as always. And again, that is part of my job, is looking at the fact that in the times that we're living in, we know that public money is an ever shrinking pot. We know that we know there's no end to austerity in sight now. The government have made it clear that it's going to continue into the next Parliament, so we're working against a backdrop of the fact that we're going to be expected to deliver ever more for ever less money. So another part of my job is looking at, in the long term, over the next 20 to 30 years, on the basis that the council's precept will probably not be increasing in line with real costs, what can we do to actually start making ourselves a bit more self-sufficient? How can we start to generate our own income to actually develop ourselves and pursue some of the aims that we have? And by having somebody in the role of town coordinator, there is at least somebody in position now whose job it is to start thinking about those things and actively pursue them, which there has never been before in Selsey. So that is a good thing, in that we actually have the town council have recognised that we need somebody whose role it is really to start thinking about these things and looking at this. One of the things I'm looking at is actually what can we do in the future to protect ourselves a bit from what we know is going to come over the next 20 years. We're lucky in many ways. We are a very tight-knit community. I mean, it is a great place to live for that. There's a few places in the UK, I would say, that actually have such a tight sense of community, and I suspect that that's mainly our geography that's created that, but whatever, it's a brilliant thing that we can tap into. We are very resilient because of our issues of geography. We tend to have to think about new ways to do things here and sort our own problems out, which again is fantastic. And actually we are very blessed here with a number of natural resources which we could exploit more than we do. We do have more sunshine here than virtually anywhere else in the UK, so there's things maybe we could be doing to look at that, using that for generating maybe energy to create income for the community, things like that. You know, we have natural resources in terms of the beach and the environment which people are attracted to and want to come and see and spend time in and spend money on. Again, that's only going to improve as things like the scheme at Medbury complete. That's actually, it's a great thing for us because it really is kind of limiting our size and development in a way and kind of protecting us for the future as that land develops and matures and becomes protected by various designations, which it will within the next 10 years or so. Makes Selsey even more contained and desirable, and it's enhancing the offer that we have around us. So again, that's perhaps going to change the tourism offer here over the next 10 years or so. Gives us huge opportunities again then to develop our offering to capitalise upon that. So that's really exciting and gives us potential for economic benefits. We have lots of very fertile land around here. We're an area that people want to live. There is development pressure, there always will be, because we live in a small country and we live in a very attractive part of it, and so people clearly are always going to want to move here and live here. And I don't think you can say you're going to shut the door on any development in Selsey ever again. But what you have to do is look at it and say, right, okay, what can we sensitively and sustainably manage? And accepting that some development is going to happen, how can we actually make that work for us to deliver what we need? Yes, we might have more people coming here, but how can we use it to actually improve our infrastructure and give us what we want? So, you know, I'm pragmatic. I would love to put a gate on the ferry and just say nobody else can come over, but I know that's not going to happen. So, you know, it's about trying to therefore have a clear vision as a town about what we want to achieve so that we can try and control that process a bit better.
And is this a long-term transformation, or is there a plan that says, well, let's, in, say, 5 or 10 years, be a completely different place to where we are now?
But I think that you have to be realistic about what you can achieve, and so these things are iterative. It's always evolution, not revolution, unless somebody came along with several billions of pounds that we could just rebuild the town over a 5-year period. That's not going to happen. So again, it comes back to the fact that a large part of my job, I think, is in helping the community to articulate what they want and then plot that course for how we get there. And that's looking at what are our goals in the short term, what do we want to achieve in the next 5 years, what do we want to achieve in the next 15 years, and what do we want it to look like in 50 years' time, actually. And if we at least have that shared vision in mind, then it's much easier to keep the course heading for it. You know, it's not going to happen overnight, and it's a case of small steps, but I'm inherently optimistic, so I thoroughly believe that we can get there.
Well, that's great to hear, and I think you've got a challenge ahead of you, and I think you've recognised that, but there again, that's what makes a job interesting, isn't it, when you've got, you know, you're not just ordering pens, but you're actually doing something that's going to see a positive change in a community, so that's great. My last question to you would be, let's project your time forward, let's say 5 or 10 years, and what would you like to be able to look back on over that time when you've been town coordinator and say, that's my biggest achievement?
I would like people to be saying to me, when I go down the high street, I'd like the high street retailers to be saying to me, we've had our best summer ever this year. It's been great, it's fantastic, town's really looking up, it's really turned around, and you know, everyone's feeling the benefits. And I would like to think that my children who are at primary school here at the moment don't feel when they get to the point of leaving secondary school that they have to leave Selsey if they want to have a career, that there actually will be options for them here rather than having to move away.
Sam, I wish you the best of luck in a big job, but I'm sure you're big enough to tackle it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. That was really interesting. Now it's time for this week's short story, read for us again by Ellis Berg.
An interview at the Academy. Thank you for seeing me after all, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. You see, I handed in my application for the post of French teacher directly to your office 2 days before the deadline. Yes, I know it didn't arrive at your entry until this morning. Well, actually, I know now. I mistook the school office. Yes, and the school cook hadn't anybody to... Well, anyway, I really appreciate your generosity in allowing me to present myself and my credentials, as it were, to the Board of Governors, to you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry, I don't quite understand. You had decided not to put me on the short list, and yet I'm here. I see. You heard me crying in your secretary's office and simply wanted to know what was wrong. Oh, is that all? Dear, dear, I can soon tell you. They were tears of joy. I remembered my head of department assuring me that the reference he was writing would get me any post in the country, or indeed out of it. In fact, and you'll find this hard to believe, he actually suggested I took a fortnight's sick leave while he decided on the wording that would blaze a trail from his school to anywhere as far as I liked. You have his letter there. Oh, that is really helpful. He couldn't wait for me to get a new job. Would it be possible to hear what he... Oh, you have every intention... Oh, yes, of course I can tell you what he means, though it rather speaks for itself. He says my classroom control is beyond anything he has ever seen. Well, he is generous, and he was always coming into my classroom to observe my methods. He used to jot down little notes which he said would open the Ofsted inspector's eyes. He used to joke that he never knew what I'd do next. He was very relieved to see that the boys recovered after the guillotine demonstration. He agreed it was most ingenious of them to improvise with my chair, a wastepaper basket, a football, and a piece of glass from the broken window, which had just been repaired. Again. He went on to say that I was teaching the syllabus entirely to my satisfaction, and that I was making it realistic. Slightly more than he would have liked, and the headmaster was a little worried about the number of parents. Anyway, he noted that my contention that education wasn't divided up into watertight compartments was demonstrated in teaching où sont les toilettes, and then allowing the class to practice at their convenience. Oh, convenient. I've only just seen that one. Yes, a very popular one. That. How many lessons? Oh, not more than 2 or 3. Yes, I did take some students to Paris. Such an exciting trip. And full advantage was taken of the facilities. Yes, as you say, they'd learnt that one. The boys were particularly adventurous, although the gendarmerie looked rather puzzled when they were greeted with "Good morning" by all the boys. The girls seemed to think they would understand "I will only say these once," but in the end the gendarmerie was so helpful, watching the children wherever they went. And the last of the pupils came home quite safely 2 or 3 days ago. They told me they'd been to 1 or 2 clubs and stage shows. Highly commendable initiative, don't you think? The boys found the Moulin Rouge and Folies Bergère very instructive, though the girls thought the management thoroughly mean and didn't spend enough on the women's costumes. Luckily, they all had credit cards, so their parents didn't have to worry about finding the euros. I'm not surprised at your reaction. It isn't often... Oh, I say. Oh, that's really kind of you, especially as I've other schools I've applied to. You think I should renew my application in 3 or 4 years' time? If I'm still teaching, now there's our thought. Yes, you're most considerate, and I shall certainly bear you in mind. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for seeing me, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, and it's a wonderful academy. I'd love to be here, but perhaps later on, yes. I really must apologise again about knocking over the water and the chair. Yes, and the table. Which way is the office? Mustn't forget my travelling expenses, must I?
Ellis, your stories keep us all spellbound, and we look forward to every tale. Now it's time to tell you what's happening in our town this week. We all honour the Selsey men who gave up their lives in the Great War. Find out how Selsey will commemorate the centenary of the start of the First World War, and you can see what life was like prior to 1914 by visiting the Town Hall exhibition on Friday and Saturday. The exhibition is open from 10 in the morning until 4 p.m. Selsey and District Lions Club are presenting Bangers and Blues at the Selsey Centre on Saturday. Tickets are $8.50 and include a premium quality hot dog. The doors open at 7 p.m. Saturday and Sunday, come to the Visitor Centre, Selsey Road, Siddlesham, and you can join the safari at 10:30 a.m. and spend the next 2 hours finding out what lives under logs and leaves. The cost is £3 for non-members or £1.50 for RSPB members. On Sunday there is a BMX scooter and skateboard competition at the East Beach Skate Park. The youngsters will astound you with their skills on bikes, scooters and boards. Sunday is also Lifeboat Day, when the lifeboat is launched, when the helicopter works with the lifeboat, and when there is a fair on Lifeboat Green. There will also be an exciting drop by parachutists from the Princess of Wales Royal Regiment's display team, the Tigers. There will be smoke trailing, flags flying, and they will be performing several amazing formations both in the air and under the parachute.